There comes a time when everything you once believed in starts to collapse. The way you saw yourself, the way you saw the world, the things that used to bring you comfort, all of it begins to fall apart, and you're left standing in the ruins of your old life, wondering what went wrong. This isn't just a rough patch. This isn't just a phase. This is something much deeper, something ancient that only a few will ever experience. This is the dark night of the soul. If you're going through it, you already know that words can't fully capture the weight of it. It's not just sadness. It's not just confusion. It's a complete unraveling of reality itself. And if you're chosen one, this process is not accidental. It's a calling. It's a necessary initiation into the person you were always meant to be. For those who are meant to walk a higher path, life will strip away everything that is not real. It will take away illusions, false identities, and attachments you never questioned, forcing you to confront the raw, unfiltered truth of existence. It will feel like you're losing everything, but in reality, you're being set free. This is the stage where many people break.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lessons.
Some turn back, desperately clinging to their old lives, trying to force themselves to fit into a world they have outgrown. Others numb themselves, distracting, avoiding, pretending it's not happening. But the ones who make it through, the ones who surrender to the fire and allow themselves to be transformed, become something else entirely. They become untouchable. They become unshakable. They become truly free. One of the clearest signs that you're in your dark night of the soul is the feeling of complete emptiness. Not just sadness, not just loneliness, but a void so deep that nothing seems to fill it. The things that used to bring you happiness now feel meaningless. The people you once connected with now seem distant. Even your own thoughts feel foreign, as if you've stepped outside of yourself and are looking at your life from the outside. This emptiness is terrifying because it feels endless. It feels like you've lost your purpose, like nothing matters anymore. But this emptiness isn't a punishment. It's an opening. It's the clearing away of everything that was built on false foundations so that something real can finally take its place. The question is, can you sit with that emptiness without trying to escape it? Another unmistakable sign is the collapse of your external world. This could come through sudden financial struggles, the loss of relationships, unexpected betrayals, or even a full-blown existential crisis. Life starts taking things away, and no matter how hard you try to hold on, nothing stays. What most people don't realize is that this isn't random. The dark night of the soul doesn't just strip you of things for no reason. It removes everything that is keeping you from your true path. If something is unstable, if something isn't meant for you, it will be taken. If a relationship was built on illusion, it will crumble. If your purpose was based on ego, it will be shattered. This isn't destruction for the sake of destruction. This is purification. This is life forcing you to let go of everything that isn't truly yours, so when you finally rebuild, it will be on unshakable ground. Then comes the isolation. You start feeling completely disconnected from the world, from society, from the people around you. It's not just loneliness, it's a deep soul-level detachment that makes you feel like you don't belong anywhere. You see through the illusions of the world, the games people play, the meaningless conversations, the shallow pursuits. And because of this, you struggle to relate to anyone. You might try to explain what you're going through, but no one understands. It's like speaking a language no one else speaks, like waking up from a dream while everyone else is still asleep. This is the part where many people start to doubt themselves. They think, maybe something is wrong with me. Maybe I'm broken. Maybe I'm going crazy. But you're not. You're just seeing reality as it truly is, and that can be incredibly isolating. And then, the most painful part, the death of the old self. The version of you that was built on survival, on conditioning, on societal expectations, it starts to die. And this death is brutal because it feels like losing yourself entirely. You look in the mirror and don't recognize who you are anymore. Your old dreams, your old desires, even your old personality starts to dissolve, and you're left with nothing but uncertainty. This is the ultimate test. Most people will do everything in their power to hold on to their old identity, to try and force themselves back into the person they used to be. But the chosen ones, the ones who are meant to rise, let it die. They surrender. They allow themselves to be reborn as something new, something true. But here's the part that no one talks about before you rise. You will be tested. The dark night of the soul isn't just about destruction, it's about proving that you are ready for what comes next. And these tests will come in the form of temptations, doubts, and illusions trying to pull you back into your old ways. You will be given opportunities to return to comfort, to mediocrity, to the familiar. People from your past will resurface, offering you the same toxic cycles you've outgrown. You will be tempted to numb yourself, to distract yourself, to pretend none of this is happening. But the real test is whether you have the courage to keep going. Whether you have the strength to walk alone, to trust the unknown, to step into the version of yourself that you were always meant to be. And then something shifts. After all the suffering, after all the loss, after all the darkness, something inside you awakens. A power you didn't know you had. A clarity that cuts through the illusions. A certainty that no one and nothing outside of you can ever take away. You realize that everything that was taken from you was never truly yours. You realize that the pain wasn't punishment, it was preparation. You realize that the version of you that existed before could never have handled what's coming next. And what's coming next is something beyond anything you ever imagined. So here's the question. Are you willing to lose everything you thought you were to become everything you were meant to be? Because that's what the dark night of the soul is really about. It's not about suffering. It's not about loss. It's about transformation. It's about stepping into a power so great that the old you couldn't contain it. And once you come out on the other side, you will understand why it had to happen. Why nothing else made sense until now. Why this was always the path you were meant to walk. And when that moment comes, you won't just be healed. You won't just be awakened. You will be unstoppable. When you start to rise from the dark night of the soul, the first thing you notice is that the world doesn't look the same. It's not that the world has changed, it's you. You see through things you used to overlook. The conversations that once entertained you now seem empty. The places that once felt familiar now feel foreign. It's like waking up from a deep sleep and realizing you were dreaming the whole time. Nothing truly makes sense, yet everything is clearer than ever. This can be disorienting because while you've changed, the world around you hasn't. People still play the same games, chase the same illusions, and live by the same rules that never really existed. You try to explain what you've been through, but no words can truly capture it. And even if they could, most people wouldn't understand. They would nod, they would listen, but they wouldn't feel it. Because this kind of transformation isn't something that can be described, it has to be experienced. This is the stage where many people feel an overwhelming sense of loneliness. Not in the way they did before, when they were disconnected from themselves, but in a deeper way, a loneliness that comes from realizing how few people truly see the world for what it is. You start noticing how much of life is built on illusion, how people wear masks, not just in public, but even in their most intimate moments, how they avoid silence because they're afraid of what they might hear, how they distract themselves with entertainment, relationships, and endless goals just to avoid facing the truth. And for a while, this can feel unbearable. You might even envy those who are still asleep because ignorance, at times, seems far more comfortable than awareness. But there is no going back. Once you've seen, you cannot unsee. And this is where the real test begins. The first test is patience. You've been broken down, burned, and rebuilt, and now you're ready for what's next. But nothing happens. No great revelation, no divine reward, no immediate purpose that suddenly makes it all make sense. Just silence. Just waiting. This is where most people get frustrated and fall into doubt. They think, I've done the work, I've faced the darkness, so why does nothing feel different? But this waiting period is not a punishment, it's integration. You don't plant a seed and expect a tree the next day. Your soul needs time to adjust, to settle into its new form. And the more you try to force things, the more resistance you create. The ones who make it through this phase are the ones who learn to trust the stillness, who understands that just because nothing seems to be happening doesn't mean nothing is happening. Growth is often invisible until one day, without warning, everything shifts. The second test is detachment. The things that used to trigger you no longer have power over you, but life will test you to see if that change is real. The same situations will arise, the same conflicts, the same temptations, the same struggles, but this time, your reaction determines everything. The universe doesn't test you to make you suffer. It tests you to show you how far you've come. If you react the way you always have, if you fall into the same cycles, if you let the past pull you back in, then you haven't truly changed. But if you can observe without attachment, respond without reacting, and walk away without fear, then you know you are free. And this is where something incredible happens. Things that used to drain you no longer affect you. People who once had control over your emotions lose their grip. Situations that would have triggered anger, fear, or doubt now feel insignificant. And in that moment, you realize just how much power you've taken back. The final test is surrender. After everything you've been through, after all the battles you've fought, you reach a point where you stop fighting. Not because you've given up, but because you finally understood that control was never yours to begin with. You don't chase anymore. You don't force. You don't resist. You let life move through you instead of trying to control its direction. And this is when everything starts to align. The right people appear. The right opportunities come effortlessly. The path that once seemed impossible suddenly unfolds before you. Not because you manipulated it into existence, but because you became the version of yourself that was always meant to walk it. This is the moment where everything clicks. You look back at your dark night of the soul and realize it wasn't destruction, it was preparation. You see that every loss was making space for something greater. That every moment of pain was shaping you into someone unbreakable. That every delay, every setback, every disappointment was leading you exactly where you were always meant to be. And now, you stand in a place you never thought you'd reach, not because you fought your way here, but because you finally let go of everything that was holding you back. This is what it means to be truly free. And then something strange happens. You no longer feel the need to explain yourself. You no longer seek validation for your transformation. There was a time when you desperately wanted others to understand, when you tried to put your awakening into words, hoping anyone would truly hear you. But now, you realize that understanding isn't something you can give to people. They have to find it for themselves. You start to speak less and observe more. You watch people cling to their illusions, defend their limitations, and avoid their own reflections. And instead of frustration, you feel compassion. You were there once. You know what it's like to be asleep, to fight the very thing that's trying to free you. And in that moment, you stop needing to wake people up. You stop trying to pull them out of their own darkness. Not because you don't care, but because you finally understand that everyone has their own timing, their own lessons, and their own path to walk. This is where your energy shifts. Before, you were trying to escape the pain, trying to force healing, trying to make sense of it all. But now, you are still. You are at peace, not because life is suddenly perfect, but because you are no longer resisting it. You don't chase happiness anymore because you realize happiness was never something to be chased. It was simply the absence of resistance. The absence of needing things to be different than they are. And when you stop running, when you stop fighting, something beautiful happens. Life starts flowing effortlessly. The things you used to struggle for now come to you naturally. The opportunities you once begged for now find you on their own. The love you thought you had to search for was always within you. And the reason this happens is simple: you have become what you were seeking. But the most powerful realization comes when you stop waiting for a destination. You always thought there would be a moment when you would finally arrive, when everything would make sense, when you would be complete. But now you see the truth: there is no final destination. There is no end point. There is only this moment, and the next, and the next. The dark night of the soul wasn't something to escape. It wasn't a phase to survive. It was life itself, breaking you open so you could finally live without the weight of who you thought you had to be. And now you walk lighter, not because life got easier, but because you are no longer carrying what was never yours to hold. You see, the real transformation was never about becoming someone new. It was about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. And now that you remember, nothing can ever take that from you again. And then you notice something even deeper. Nothing external truly moves you the way it once did. The fears that used to control you, the worries that used to consume you, the desires that once dictated your every move, they all feel distant, like echoes of a life that no longer belongs to you. You watch people chase success, approval, distractions, conflict, and you no longer feel the pull to join them. Not because you've become indifferent, but because you finally see how meaningless it all is when your sense of self no longer depends on it. You no longer need to prove anything, achieve anything, or fix anything outside of you, because you are no longer looking for yourself in the external world. What once felt like a never-ending hunger for more now feels like a quiet, unshakable completeness. You are simply here, existing in a way that requires nothing more than what already is. This changes everything. Relationships shift because you are no longer seeking to be filled by another person. no longer playing the roles that once kept you trapped in cycles of validation and attachment. Conversations become different because you no longer engage in meaningless drama, no longer need to be right, no longer react to things that used to trigger you. Even your daily life feels lighter because you're no longer carrying the weight of imaginary expectations, no longer exhausting yourself trying to control things that were never yours to control. You move through the world like water, adapting, flowing, unaffected by the things that once used to shake you to your core. People start noticing the change. Some admire it, some resent it, some don't understand it at all. But none of that matters because their reactions no longer define you. The peace you found cannot be disturbed by anything outside of you. And then comes the final understanding, the one that shifts everything permanently. You realize that nothing was ever missing. Not love, not purpose, not meaning. You were never broken. You were never lost. Everything you thought you needed was always within you, buried beneath layers of conditioning, fear, and illusion. The dark night of the soul didn't give you anything new. It simply stripped away everything that wasn't real, everything that was never truly you. And now, standing in the silence of all that has been removed, you finally see yourself clearly. Not as someone who has been changed, but as someone who has finally remembered. And in that moment, you understand this is what freedom truly is. Not escaping life, not transcending pain, not reaching some higher state of perfection. Just being here fully, without resistance, without fear, without anything left to chase. Just existing exactly as you are, and realizing that this is enough. And then something unexpected happens. You stop thinking about healing, growth, awakening. You stop trying to measure how far you've come or how much further there is to go. The obsession with progress disappears because you finally understand that there was never anything to fix. The need to constantly analyze your emotions, to search for meaning in every experience, to dissect every moment for lessons, it all fades. Not because you don't care, but because you don't need to anymore. You are no longer living in your mind, no longer trapped in the endless loop of trying to understand life instead of living it. And in that space, in that absence of resistance, something incredible happens. Life starts to feel effortless. Not because circumstances have changed, but because you have stopped trying to control them. The weight of needing everything to have meaning, needing every moment to be significant, needing every step to be part of some grand spiritual narrative, it's gone. And in its place, there is only presence, only simplicity, only life, exactly as it is. This is where true freedom begins, not in some dramatic moment of enlightenment, but in the quiet realization that you can just exist. You can wake up without a plan, without a purpose, without needing the day to be anything other than what it is. You can sit in silence without looking for answers. You can move through the world without needing to be seen, heard, or understood. You don't need to prove your growth. You don't need to explain your peace. You don't need to justify your existence. And without all of those invisible burdens, you notice something you never truly felt before: lightness. Not the temporary kind that comes from external success or fleeting happiness, but a deep, unshakable lightness that has nothing to do with circumstances. The kind that comes when you are no longer at war with yourself. The kind that comes when you no longer need to fight to be who you are. And then, without thinking about it, you start laughing more. Not because anything is particularly funny, but because you finally understand how simple it all really is. The things that used to consume you, the thoughts that used to keep you up at night, the fears that once controlled you, they all seem so small now. You see people taking life so seriously, chasing things that don't matter, drowning in problems that aren't real, and instead of frustration, all you feel is love. Because you remember what it was like to be there, to be lost in the illusion, to believe that happiness was always just out of reach. But now you see the truth. There was never anything missing. There was never anything outside of you that could give you what you were looking for. And in that realization, in that final release, you don't just feel free, you are free. Not because life is perfect, not because suffering no longer exists, but because none of it owns you anymore. And that, more than anything, is what it truly means to wake up.